Good evening, you're watching the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. First, the headlines. His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq sends a cable of condolences to the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Sultanate's production and import of natural gas exceed 4.19 billion cubic meters. And Oman Housing Bank reveals that the current year is to witness an accomplishment of loan applications. Those are the headlines, and now for the news in detail. His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq has sent a cable of condolences to the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, on the death of His Highness Prince Fahd bin Mohammed bin Abdulaziz bin Saud bin Faisal Al Saud. His Majesty the Sultan sent a cable of greetings to His Excellency Luis Abinader, President of the Dominican Republic, on his country's National Day. The local production and import of natural gas in Oman increased by 5.7%. The National Centre for Statistics and Information stated that the volume reached 4,019 million cubic meters by end of last month, pointing out that the industrial projects have used around 65% of the natural gas in Oman. Oil fields' use of natural gas reached 1,001 million cubic meters, while power plants have used 380 million cubic meters. Oman Housing Bank revealed that the current year will witness the accomplishments of loan applications which were presented from June 2017 to the 1st of April 2018. In a statement to Oman News Agency, the bank pointed out that the number of these applications reached 2,066, worth 100 million Omani rials. It added that the government's decision to raise the loan allocations for this year will contribute to reduce the time for approving the loan. The total value of private deposits at commercial banks in the Sultanate during last December rose by 10.8% to reach 14 billion Omani rials. The Central Bank of Oman clarified that the total value of term deposits reached more than 4 billion rials. Meanwhile, saving deposits reached around 5.4 billion Omani rials. The CBO added that the demand deposits reached 3.9 billion rials. The UN Security Council has unanimously approved a resolution demanding that all warring parties immediately institute a sustained humanitarian pause to enable the unhindered delivery of COVID-19 vaccines and the vaccination of millions of people in conflict areas. The British drafted resolution, co-sponsored by 112 countries, reiterated the Council's demand for a general and immediate cessation of hostilities in major conflicts. Britain's UN ambassador, Barbara Woodward, the current Council president, announced the results of the vote yesterday, saying the resolution will help bring vaccines to 160 million people in conflict areas or displaced by conflict. The U.S. House passed a $1.9 trillion pandemic relief package earlier today, 219 to 212. That includes $1,400 checks for most Americans and billions of dollars for schools, state and local governments and businesses. Republicans are overwhelmingly against the bill, raising concerns that the spending is vastly more than necessary and designed to advance policy priorities that go beyond helping Americans get through the pandemic. Democrats and President Joe Biden counter that a robust aid package is necessary to prevent a long and painful recovery from the pandemic. The Democrats' goal is to have COVID-19 relief approved by mid-March, when extra employment assistance and other pandemic aids expire. The Senate, which Democrats control with a tie-breaking vote from the Vice President, will consider the bill next. The novel coronavirus has killed at least 2.52 million people since the outbreak emerged in December 2019. At least 113.4 million cases of coronavirus have been registered. Of those, more than 669.5 million are now considered recovered. Yesterday, 9,676 new deaths and 421,848 new cases were recorded worldwide. The United States remains the worst affected country, with 510,467 deaths from 28.48 million cases. After the U.S., the hardest hit countries are Brazil, with 252,835 deaths, Mexico 184,474, India 156,938, and the United Kingdom 122,415 deaths. Europe overall has 848,583 deaths, Latin America and the Caribbean 673,866, Asia 255,413, the Middle East 103,754, and Africa 103,143 deaths. UN Aid Chief Mark Lowcock warned that some 60 million Yemenis, more than half the population of the Arabian Peninsula country, are going hungry. Of those, 5 million are on the brink of famine. On Monday, the United Nations hopes to raise some $3.85 billion at a virtual pledging event to avert what Lowcock says would be a large-scale, man-made famine, the worst the world will have seen for decades. More than 6 years of war in Yemen have sent the country spiraling into what the United Nations describes as the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Some 80% of Yemens need help, with 400,000 children under the age of 5 severely malnourished. For much of its food, the country relies on imports that have been badly disrupted over the years by all warring parties. UN officials are trying to revive peace talks, and the new U.S. President Joe Biden has said Yemen is a priority, declaring a halt to U.S. support for the Arab-led military campaign and demanding the war has to end. In 2018 and 2019, the United Nations prevented famine due to a well-funded aid appeal, which included large donations from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait. Still to come in a news bulletin. An Australian company innovated a new technology to detect the coronavirus cases through a breath test. Welcome back to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. The Governorate of North Batna is witnessing nowadays an abundance of fish in the local markets, which has led to achieving a balance between supply and demand. Many citizens in North Batna are connected in one way or another to fishing, which is considered a main source of income despite the difficulties and hardships of the profession. During the first 9 months of last year, fish markets in North and South Batna received around 61,386 tons of fish, recording an increase by 23%, and the value of the fish volume reached 46,646,000 Omani Riyals. The Director General of Education in South Batna continues shortlisting over 100 students who are taking part in the debating competition. The national team will include 4 students who have passed the local competitions. The Omani team will compete against other national teams in March in Qatar. The competition aims at nurturing young minds with critical thinking skills and capacity to address ideas and make sound and appealing arguments. The competition also encourages students to develop public speaking and analytical skills in addition to tolerance and acceptance in a global world where ideas, not only people, are tested against each other. The 40th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between the Sultanate and Sri Lanka was celebrated recently. The two sides launched a commemorative logo symbolizing the strong diplomatic relations between the two countries. The two countries enjoy warm and cordial relations which are attributed to historical maritime trade linkages. More details in the following report.
The Foreign Ministry and the Sri Lankan Embassy marked the 40th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations between the Sultanate and the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, the occasion of which was held recently that witnessed two sides launching commemorative logo symbolizing the strong diplomatic relations between the two friendly countries. An agreement on the mutual exemption of visa for diplomatic, special, service and official passport holders was signed coinciding with this special occasion. The two countries across the sea, from the Arabian Sea to the Indian Ocean, enjoy a warm and cordial relations which are attributed to historical maritime trade linkage. As seafaring nations, relations between Sri Lanka and Oman are traced back to the time immemorial. His Excellency Al-Amir Ajwad Umar Lebe, Ambassador of Sri Lanka to the Sultanate, highlighted these historical relationships.
Sri Lanka and Oman commemorate the 40th anniversary of their diplomatic relations on 17th February this year. We commemorated this special event occasion at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Sultanate of Oman on the 17th this month. We also launched a memorial logo to mark this occasion, and the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of both countries issued congratulatory messages, and we exchanged those two messages. And also we have signed an agreement on the mutual exemption of visas for diplomats, service passport holders and special passport holders and official passport holders between the two countries. And the Embassy of Sri Lanka is organizing a series of events to mark this occasion throughout the year.
It is well known Oman witnessed active communication with the people of the world thanks to the navigation activities Omanis practiced, which made them establish a relationship with many parts of the world and gained a high reputation in the world seaports. Sri Lanka was known as Serendib among the ancient Omani seafarers. History records visit of an Omani trading vessel to the port of Galle in Sri Lanka in 9th century. A replica of it visited Sri Lanka in 2010 in the name of Jewel of Muscat. This evokes memories of cultural and trade exchanges between the two countries from the ancient times. People-to-people relations, in fact, predate the establishment of the formal diplomatic relations, while the diplomatic relations started in 1981.
In this journey, of course, we have two important roadmaps before us. The vision of President of Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the vistas of prosperity and splendor, and the Oman's Vision 2040, engineered by His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq. So these two roadmaps are clear roadmaps, clear blueprints to achieve our bilateral cooperation in the future, to achieve another milestone in the history of our bilateral relations in the future.
Oman and Sri Lanka established diplomatic relations in 1981. Sri Lanka opened its resident diplomatic mission in Muscat in 1987. Oman opened its resident mission in Colombo in 2013. Since then, bilateral relations between the two countries continued to thrive over the past 4 decades.
And also I wish to take this opportunity to extend my best wishes to His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, Hafizahullah wa Ra'ah, for his good health, personal well-being, and as well as to the friendly people of the Sultanate of Oman for their continued progress, prosperity in the years ahead. May the bilateral relations between the two countries continue to flourish in the years ahead to achieve another milestone in our history.
A landmark memorandum of understanding which was signed in 2012 on bilateral political consultation between the foreign ministries of the two countries. This MOU serves as a catalyst for the growing bilateral cooperation in multifaceted fields between the two countries.
An Australian company introduced a new technology to detect the coronavirus cases through a breath test. The innovation, which is considered as the first of its kind in the world, is hoped to be available by the end of this year.
In an attempt to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, an Australian company presented a scientific innovation to detect the infected corona cases through a breath test. A group of researchers developing the innovation, which is the first of its kind in the world, said that this innovation facilitates and speeds up testing processes as it gives a highly accurate result within minutes.
Blow into this, it tells you whether you have COVID, potentially tells you what other viruses that you have, and potentially gives you information on how infectious you are. So this is a massive game changer all in 30 seconds.
The Australian company Grayscan aims to provide this innovation to be used in checkpoints on the roads and in vital places such as airports, in a step to facilitate the process of reopening the Australian airports, which have been closed since the start of the pandemic last year.
Imagine getting onto an aeroplane and having that feeling of, is someone who have COVID? If you have a breathalyzer test when you walk in, you know everyone who's on that plane doesn't have it.
The Melbourne-based company is seeking financial support from the Australian government in the coming few months to begin the mass manufacturing phase and make this innovative device available by the end of the year. From Melbourne, Australia, Musa bin Ja'far al-Lawati.
This is the Sultan of Oman television. Before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. His Majesty Sultan Haitham bin Tariq sends a cable of condolences to the custodian of the two holy mosques, King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The Sultanate's production and import of natural gas exceeded 4.19 billion cubic meters. And Oman Housing Bank revealed that the current year is to witness an accomplishment of loan applications. And with the end of tonight's news bulletin, we would like to remind you that to keep following the precautionary measures of wearing face masks, washing hands, and keeping physical distance from each other. From all of us here at the newsroom and the studio, it's good night and stay safe.